Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I have another classic movie review for you today, and it is one of my all-time favourite films. Every Which Way But Loose, the 1978 film starring Clint Eastwood. Now I'll start off by saying that Clint Eastwood is my all-time movie hero. He is the actor whose movies I truly grew up on, and who I respect the most in the movie industry today. Um, there is no denying that he is an absolute legend, both in acting, in the movies he's made as an actor, and the movies he has made as a director. A lot of his early films, like this, like The Dirty Harrys, and the westerns that he made a massive impact on my movie choices as a child. And I wanted to do a classic movie review for arguably my favourite Clint Eastwood movie. It probably isn't, I do have others, but it is right up there, and I have such an affection for this movie. So for those of you that don't know, and if you are quite a young person watching this review, you may well not know what this movie is or even heard of it. If you are a true film buff, fan, trivia expert, you will definitely know what this movie is. And it is this was Clint Eastwood's first foray into comedy, and the story goes that he wasn't sure about doing a comedy, so he consulted with his friend at the time, Burt Reynolds, who was used to doing things like Cannonball Run, etc. And Burt Reynolds actually advised him to do this movie. And while doing a bit of research for this review, it actually this is actually, when you adjust the money it made for inflation today, this is the biggest hit that Clint Eastwood has ever had, box office wise. It was a huge hit. Critics hated it when this came out, this film, but it was a huge hit with the audiences, so much so that they made a sequel, Any Which Way You Can, which is also very good. So what do we get in this movie? Well, in this movie, Clint Eastwood stars as a guy called Philo Beddoe, and he lives, as daft as it sounds, he lives at home with his ma, and his friend Jeffrey Lewis, who plays Orville. Now, it never really makes it clear in the movie, but I think they're brothers, because they both live in the same place, and they both call Ruth Gordon's character Ma. So I always made the connection when I was young, and I still do, that they were brothers, but it never really makes it clear. They could just be best friends for all I know. So they kind of run like their own recovery, where they go out and recover cars and fix them, etc. But what he also has, which is what is the selling point for this movie, is he has a pet orangutan, Clint Eastwood, called Clyde, that he won in a fight several years ago out in the desert somewhere. He felt sorry for it, so he won it in a fight and took it away. And it's like part of the family, is this monkey, this orangutan, sorry. So at the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to all the characters. We're introduced to Clyde, and at the beginning of the film, he goes on a night out to the local country and western bar with the Orville and Clyde. And he hears a country and western singer, Sandra Locke, who was his partner at the time and was for many years to come in real life. She's singing at this country and western club, and he really takes to her. He really likes her. So he starts getting to know her, slowly introduces her to Clyde. But along the way, he keeps getting in fights, Clint Eastwood. He gets into bar fights. He gets into a bar fight and beats up a couple of off-duty policemen, so he makes some enemies there. He gets into a fight with this local biker gang, who are probably the worst biker gang known to man. They try and really hard and what have you, but they're really poor bikers. So he gets into fights with them, but also to make extra money, he does fist fighting, illegal underground fist fighting. But he's really very good. So he tends to win all these fights, and that's a good way for him to make money as well. But what actually happens is the Sandra Locke character, Lynn Halsey Taylor, he falls for her. He gives her some money to try and get out of this contract, so he thinks, with her manager. But she actually disappears, and he thinks that she's been taken by her own will by her manager, who's an ex-boyfriend sort of thing. And he decides to go and search for her because he's fallen in love with her, basically. And Orville comes with him along for the ride, and Clyde comes with him, leaving poor old Ma on her own, Ruth Gordon. So they go like on cross country to try and find Lynn Halsey, Taylor, Sandra Locke's character, getting into all sorts of trouble, fights along the way, make money doing more fist fights. And there's this legendary fighter called Tank Murdoch, who Clint Eastwood would really like to fight at some point to prove his worth. And that fight happens right at the end of the movie. So that's kind of the story that we get here. Now, first and foremost, this movie is a comedy. It's not one of those belly laugh comedies, but the situations that they get in and the stuff that Clyde does is really very funny. I mean, there's to indicate right in his van, Clint Eastwood, he just says to Clyde, "Right turn, Clyde," and Clyde goes like that, right turn out of the window. But he keeps hitting people and knocking people off the bikes and all that kind of stuff. It's such a wonderful movie, this. It's one of those movies that you can watch and it's impossible not to like. Is it high quality stuff? No. A lot of people argue that it's absolute drivel and trash, but it isn't. It's just a wonderful watch. And it's such an interesting concept to have an orangutan in the movie, and it's so charming and it's so funny. The poster you can see on screen now, that is from the sequel Any Which Way You Can, which I do recommend as well. That is a very, very good movie. It was a very good sequel, but very much the same movie, really. They just changed it up very slightly, but it's almost a copy and paste of the first one. So if you've never seen Every Which Way But Loose, you've got to find it. You've got to search it out just for curiosity's sake, really, because it's an absolute classic movie, one of Clint Eastwood's, arguably most notorious, because like I say, critics don't like it, but audiences loved it. It's a wonderful, wonderful watch, great fun, great movie, and definitely one that's worth seeking out.